-40 degrees. The wind drives snow sideways across a treeless expanse. There is no wood, no fuel, no fire. A human body, exposed in these conditions, loses core temperature in minutes. Consciousness fractures within the hour. Death follows quiet, inevitable, certain. And yet, in this exact landscape, humans survived for thousands of years. Not through fire, not through thick walls, not through anything that would make sense to a modern eye. They survived by digging a hole barely large enough to hold their bodies, by crawling inside with others, so close that breath mixed with breath, by sealing themselves into a space so cramped it looked like a grave. Everything about this shelter looks wrong, and that's exactly why it works. Modern survival training has created a mythology of cold weather shelter. The instructions are familiar. Build large. Create distance from the frozen ground. Stack insulation high. Find wood. Make fire. The contemporary mind imagines warmth as something manufactured, a product of combustion, space, and separation from others. We believe bigger shelters hold more heat. We believe fire is non-negotiable. We believe comfort and survival are aligned. These assumptions have killed more people than the cold itself. The physics of heat transfer operate without regard for human intuition. A large shelter requires exponentially more energy to warm. Fire demands fuel that may not exist. Separation from other bodies means separation from the most reliable heat source a human possesses. Modern rescue teams have recovered the frozen remains of individuals who built textbook shelters, spacious, insulated, solitary. They did everything right. They died anyway. In 1973, Soviet archaeologists excavating a Paleolithic site in the Kostenki region of Russia discovered something that defied initial interpretation. The dwelling floors were impossibly small. The post holes indicated roof heights so low that standing was impossible. The arrangement suggested multiple individuals occupying a space that seemed designed for one. Early researchers assumed these were storage pits, ceremonial spaces, or children's quarters. They were wrong. These were survival shelters, and they were built small on purpose. Similar findings emerged across the Arctic archaeological record. Inuit winter houses from the pre-contact period show sleeping platforms designed for maximum density. Ethnographic accounts from Siberian indigenous communities describe winter nights spent in physical contact so complete that rolling over required coordination. The Sami people of northern Scandinavia constructed lavu shelters with central fire pits, but their emergency survival structures, used when separated from fuel sources, followed the same principle: minimal space, maximum contact, zero fire. The Netsilik Inuit, documented by Knud Rasmussen in the early 20th century, described emergency snow shelters sized precisely to body volume, not a cubic inch larger than necessary. This pattern appears across continents, across centuries, across cultures that never made contact. Convergent evolution in survival architecture. The same answer, discovered independently, again and again. Small, close, together. The shelter that saves your life at -40 degrees looks like the last place you would want to be. It begins with a depression in the snow, or, when possible, in the earth beneath it. The hole is dug just deep enough to lie flat, just wide enough to hold the bodies that will occupy it. For 3 people, the interior width measures roughly 5 feet, the length 6, the height no more than 2 feet at the center. This is not comfortable. This is not spacious. This is barely enough room to exist. The entrance is positioned below the main chamber, a critical detail. Warm air rises, cold air sinks. A lowered entrance creates a natural trap for heated air, preventing it from spilling out each time someone enters or exits. The floor is lined with whatever insulation exists: pine boughs, dried grass, animal hides, or in their absence, clothing removed and layered beneath the body rather than worn. Then come the people. 3 adults, sometimes 4, arranged in direct physical contact. Limbs interlock, backs press against stomachs, faces rest inches apart. The heat of exhalation becomes a shared resource. The entrance is sealed, not airtight, but blocked enough to prevent wind infiltration. Snow packed against the opening creates a thermal barrier. From the outside, the structure is nearly invisible. A slight mound, a human-shaped absence beneath the white. From the inside, it is dark, cramped, claustrophobic, and alive. A resting human body produces approximately 80 to 100 watts of thermal energy. This is a small space heater operating continuously, requiring no fuel but calories already consumed. In a large shelter, this heat dissipates, immediately absorbed by cold air, radiated into walls, lost to every surface. The body cannot produce warmth faster than the environment steals it. But in a shelter sized precisely to body volume, the math changes. 3 bodies produce roughly 270 watts. The air volume they must heat measures perhaps 25 cubic feet. The surface area for heat loss is minimal. The ratio of energy production to energy loss shifts from hopeless to survivable. Within 30 minutes of occupation, interior temperature rises from ambient to above freezing. In some documented cases, interior temperatures reached 50 degrees Fahrenheit, while exterior conditions remained at -40. A 90-degree differential. No fire, no technology, just physics. The snow itself contributes. Crystalline ice contains trapped air pockets that function as natural insulation. A snow roof provides an R value approaching 1 per inch, roughly equivalent to fiberglass batting. Wind, the true killer in cold environments, cannot penetrate. Convective heat loss, responsible for the majority of fatal cold exposure cases, drops to near zero. Moisture management presents the only genuine danger. Human respiration releases water vapor. In a sealed space, this moisture condenses on cold surfaces, eventually dripping onto occupants. Wet bodies lose heat 25 times faster than dry ones. The solution is counterintuitive, but essential. Allow minimal air exchange. Let condensation form on the walls and freeze there, rather than accumulating as liquid. Maintain the entrance as a pressure release, not a seal. The shelter breathes. Slowly, just enough. Survival in these conditions was never an individual achievement. The mathematics are unforgiving. A single body produces 80 watts. A single body also possesses a surface area of roughly 18 square feet, all of it radiating heat into the environment. One person, alone, cannot generate enough warmth to offset their own losses. The equation does not balance. 2 people improve the ratio. 3 approach viability. 4 or more create genuine safety margins. This is why solitary hunters, separated from their groups, faced such extreme risk. Not because they lacked skill, not because they lacked knowledge, because the physics required partners. Archaeological evidence suggests that pre-contact Arctic communities maintained strict social protocols around cold weather sleeping. Position within the shelter was determined by age, health, and reproductive status. The young and the elderly occupied the protected center. Able-bodied adults slept at the edges, absorbing the greater cold exposure. This was not sentimentality. This was resource allocation. The community survived by sacrificing the comfort of those who could afford to sacrifice. Personal space, a concept modern humans treat as a psychological necessity, did not exist in these contexts. Bodies were heat sources. Privacy was a luxury that killed. Accounts from Siberian indigenous communities describe winter nights where families slept in rotating shifts, continuously adjusting positions to distribute cold exposure evenly. No single individual bore the burden of the coldest position for the entire night. This required coordination, communication, trust. A group that could not cooperate in sleep could not survive. The Franklin expedition departed England in 1845 with 129 men, the finest technology of the era, and supreme confidence in European methods. They carried iron stoves, canned provisions, woolen uniforms, coal. When the ships became trapped in Arctic ice, the men built shelters according to British military doctrine: large, separated, dependent on fire. The fuel ran out. The men died in clusters, not huddled together for warmth, but in their individual tents, maintaining social distance even as their bodies froze. Inuit hunters, who later encountered the expedition's remains, recognized the deaths immediately. They had seen this before. European explorers who refused to abandon their customs, who chose familiar discomfort over alien survival. More recently, wilderness survival research has documented repeated cases of hypothermia deaths in shelters that appeared well constructed. The common factor: excessive size. A well-meaning survivor, reasoning that bigger means safer, builds a debris hut large enough to sit up in. The body's heat output cannot maintain the air temperature. The individual sleeps, core temperature drops, and death occurs before dawn. The shelter did not fail. The physics failed. The builder created a space their body could not support. In 1985, the Canadian military conducted a series of controlled experiments on emergency cold weather survival. Soldiers were placed in Arctic conditions with minimal equipment and instructed to construct various shelter types. Researchers monitored core temperature, sleep quality, and morning condition. The results were unambiguous. Soldiers who built small, cramped shelters and slept in physical contact with others maintained stable core temperatures throughout the night. Soldiers who built larger shelters or slept alone required external heat sources to avoid hypothermia. The study's conclusion was direct. Modern soldiers should be trained to accept physical proximity as a survival necessity, not a personal choice. Similar findings emerged from Antarctic expedition data. Research station personnel, caught in whiteout conditions far from base, have survived by constructing minimal snow trenches and waiting together. In 1988, 3 members of a British Antarctic survey team survived 48 hours in a blizzard using exactly this method. Their shelter measured 4 feet by 6 feet by 2 feet high. They rotated positions every 2 hours. They shared a single sleeping bag designed for one person. They emerged with mild frostbite. They emerged alive. Modern ultralight backpackers have rediscovered these principles independently. The practice of cowboy camping, sleeping without shelter, has given way to a resurgence of micro-bivouacs. Structures just large enough for 1 or 2 bodies, with minimal air volume and maximum thermal efficiency. The ancient knowledge, suppressed by an era of abundant fuel and spacious shelters, is returning. We have spent 10,000 years convincing ourselves that comfort equals survival. It does not. Survival equals survival. Comfort is negotiable. The shelter that works at -40 degrees is cramped, dark, and psychologically distressing. It requires the surrender of personal space, private sleep, and individual autonomy. It demands trust in others so complete that their bodies become your infrastructure. This was not a temporary emergency measure. This was life. For centuries, for millennia, humans slept this way through every winter. Children were born into cultures where shared warmth was as natural as shared food. The modern instinct to recoil from physical proximity to insist on separation, on space, on individual comfort is an artifact of central heating and fossil fuel abundance. It is not instinct, it is luxury. And luxury kills. The Arctic does not negotiate. The physics do not forgive. The mathematics of heat loss do not bend for human preference. Those who survived understood something that modern humans have forgotten. Cold is not an enemy to defeat. Cold is a condition to inhabit. The shelter that looks like a mistake too small, too close, too uncomfortable, is not a failure of engineering. It is a refusal to fight on the cold's terms. And in that refusal, in that acceptance, in that deliberate embrace of discomfort, that is where survival begins.